We are now going to begin discussing functions of behavior. Please remember, while applied behavioral analysis, or ABA, functions of behavior, or an actual behavior analysis performed by a BCBA is an exact science, analyzing behavior itself is not, in the sense that we do our best to gather as much information as possible about the student and their behaviors, and then we try to determine overall patterns we see. Indicators that might show skill deficits or a need for additional supports. But unfortunately, there is not an easy button to determine the function of a student's behavior. We have a lot of great tools. There are many well qualified individuals to perform these types of analysis. And the more we understand functions of behavior, we are beginning to realize that there is a lot internally going on with the students that we are trying to observe and support. So just keep in mind that there is no perfect one answer for many of the questions that we will ask, and every student's plan to support their behaviors or their skills may look different, even with the same behaviors. So, all behaviors allow us to gain something or avoid something. And when we're talking about the function of a behavior, what that really means, the word function there means the reason why the behavior is being performed. It's whether the student is trying to gain something or avoid something. For many staff who work in general education or even special education positions who are not BCBAs that are certified to perform a behavior analysis, they say, well, I can't do that because I've not had that training. And there is some truth to that statement. We want certified BCBAs performing the most difficult analysis. However, staff that have had basic function of behavior training are able to see patterns. They're able to make decent guesses about why a student would be performing a behavior based on what they know about the student and the classroom setting. We're able to start talking about perceived function, which is really just what your best educated guess is about why a behavior occurred. Many of you have to fill out school wide office discipline referral forms or child study forms, office referral forms, and those would likely include a perceived motivation section where you can talk about why a behavior might have occurred. Again, no one is expecting you to understand the scientific level of analyzing a student's behavior. However, as a classroom teacher with experience, you likely know if a student is trying to escape an assignment, trying to gain attention. And we take all that data from many different parties and triangulate it and are able to decide what's the overall trend we're seeing here that maybe this student needs some support in. So we said that behaviors allow people to gain something or avoid something. But there's subcategories that we can consider. They are sensory, escape, connection, and tangible. Sensory is the easiest to explain in my experience, so we're going to start there. If a student is sensory seeking, that means that they want a lot of sensory input. For these students, I often find maybe they're the ones who seem like they're driven by a motor. They're always running. They struggle to sit in their seat. They benefit from things like a wiggle chair or different seating options. Maybe they stand around their desk and have a square taped around their desk so they know where their area is they can move. These are the students that like to crash and jump and slam. They might love loud music and bright lights and flashing. They might love yelling and screaming. On the other side, there might be students who avoid sensory input. For many students, loud noises can become overwhelming. Many parents and caregivers report sensory avoidance in things like clothes, socks, shoes, hair, where students or children or adults struggle with different textures on them. This is sensory avoidance, and they cause behaviors. If you were sitting uncomfortable in your clothes all day, it would start to make you probably behave differently as well. There are more than 5 sensory systems, and we are not going to get into that today, but just know that there are different ways that we can have sensory needs met. But a really good place to start is this student sensory seeking, or are they avoiding sensory input? The next area is escape, which is actually a really interesting category because we already said a function of behavior is to avoid something. However, escape is more along the lines of I am going to do whatever I can to get out of this activity, of this setting, of this task. You are going to avoid or end something that is non preferred or adversive. This might be like you ask a child to do something and they avoid as long as they possibly can. This might be that they think if I wait them out, I won't have to do this. This could also be students who elope during transitions. Um, Escape is one of those categories that could very easily be combined with one of the other ones. Just know if you have a student who avoids demands, there's a lot of talk about demand avoidance in students with autism and ADHD, that this is probably part of the conversation, this escape. The next function of behavior is connection. And years ago, we used to call this attention. So if you remember saying things like a student is attention seeking, really, connection has taken the place of attention. This is because there's less emotion and weight on connection versus attention. Attention sounds pretty negative in terms of attention seeking. Connection seeking makes sense because if you have a student who is engaged in trying to make their peers laugh, and get their attention, really what they're trying to do is connect with their peers. So we're trying to use the word connection. That's one of those language shifts that we've made in the field. Connection is so important to many students. Many of the behaviors that teachers describe fall right in this connection attention category. So, if you have a student who is performing a behavior and you believe they potentially are doing it for an attention seeking reason, one of the first questions you should ask yourself is a student trying to get my attention as an adult? Are they trying to get attention of peers? Are they trying to get attention of family? Figure out how they are trying to gain attention. Additionally, the student might avoid attention. We have some students who, even when you're praising them and recognizing them and acknowledging them, they don't love attention or connection or acknowledgement in a public setting. So, knowing this can be super helpful because if you know you have a student that avoids attention in a public way, you can provide that in a more subtle way. The last is tangible. And again, this is one that's really easy to see. Students who try to gain something, whether it be a edible treat, a reward, toys, games, preferred seating, activities, tickets, tokens, notes home, anything that we can see, feel, touch, do. This is going to be tangible. They're trying to gain. Similarly, there are some students who avoid tangible items. So if they want to avoid a certain food, maybe they will decide they're not eating dinner that night. It's actually interesting because this could potentially cross over with sensory because if you have a child who avoids mushy foods, well, fruit probably isn't their favorite thing to eat, and they might avoid that at all costs. Is it tangible because they're avoiding something we can hold? Or is it sensory because they're avoiding something that's smushy? It's an interesting way to consider why a student is acting the way they are. Remember, your first question is, are they trying to gain? Are they trying to avoid? Then consider these 4 categories. Why do we put so much emphasis on the function of behavior? Because when we know the underlying root cause of a child's behavior, we are able to more successfully decrease those behavioral errors and increase desired behaviors. Without knowing the function, it's really difficult to solve a problem of a student's behavior and know how to support and help them.